So we're on the third week of the Wisdom of Oz. The Wisdom of Oz, and this is the Tin Man Sunday. And it's finding the heart to do it. Because the poor Tin Man, he thought he didn't have a heart. He thought he was missing that important aspect of being fully human, that he was unable to... Oh, he thought he was, without a heart, but he cries periodically through the whole movie. He had a heart. What he was lacking the awareness that everyone, including himself, has everything they need already. So he just lacked the self-awareness to own it and reveal it. Love isn't what the world needs, because the world is made of love. Every person is made of love. We just need to be open to it, remember it, and reveal it. It's not enough to know it. It's not enough. We have to practice it and live it. Now, I had a wonderful experience yesterday, listening and feeling, finding the heart to do it. I thought, do what? The heart to do what? I'm not sure what the heart to do. Well, there's so much, and it's different for all of us, but I think if we put it in one big envelope, it would be the heart to be the best person we're created to be, because we're all unique and individual. Dr. Jim had shared with me a sermon by Meister Eckhart, and I love the words of Meister Eckhart. You have to kind of boil them down because he's kind of wordy and is extremely brilliant. A 13th century German Catholic priest and theologian and philosopher and mystic galore. Brilliant. And he had the courage to kind of shake up the Catholic Church and defy their dogma and rituals. And he spoke about the personal relationship we each have with Spirit, with God. That personal relationship we have with God and each other. Well, the sermon that we were looking at is the ocean of limitless compassion. And what happened, Meister Eckhart, toward the end of his life, he wrote this sermon, and it's when he had a great epiphany. And he said, beyond God is love, because we know that God is love, and God is knowledge, and we know that God is knowledge, that God is compassion. And he took the mystical term of compassion as being this huge energy and essence of the fire and creativity of God's goodness. And he said the first thing God ever does is compassion. And here's how he defines compassion. It is a consciousness, a way of seeing the world and responding to it. It comes from the knowing that we are one with God and one with each other. What a beautiful idea of compassion. And he said the most perfect name for God is compassion. And this ocean of compassion he talks about is God right here in this moment. And when Dave was talking about the soul, God is working in all our souls right now, working on compassion continually, all the time. It's the self-givingness of Spirit, and it's the compassion that's continuously being cultivated within us. And Eckhart said we could be living, breathing in and breathing out compassion if we were awake and aware. Because when we swim together in that ocean of common compassion, any sense of otherness is broken down. Compassion is the essence of feeling oneness. Oh, and I just was reading these words and I felt myself diving in this ocean of compassion, which is what you talked about today, Dave. It's the whole sense of how respecting each other in this journey. And we're all on this journey of awakening. We're all on that journey. And as soon as the Tin Man could open up and realize, oh my gosh, I've had it all along. He could really become more of on the next step to his journey of becoming the perfect Tin Man for himself. He could do that. But the other thing that the Tin Man taught us is he taught us the gift of tears. Because he could cry. And of course, when he cried in the movie, he rested. But some of us rest when we cry too because we're uncomfortable with it. But if we look at tears as being a really connection between the mind and the heart, the tears are an expression of thoughtful compassion. They're the way of expressing so much love when we've lost something we really was really precious to us. Sometimes we cry at movies or stories because we can relate to people. It's about connection. We can see that we're so much more alike than we are different. It's truly a way of getting down to the depth of our soul. And the deeper and deeper and deeper we journey into ourselves and into God, the deeper we get close to that understanding of that big word of compassion. And so that's a little bit what the Tin Man is teaching us today. Here's what my good friend Rumi says about tears, 13th century mystic Rumi. He said, tears are prayers too. Tears are prayers too. They travel to God when you can't find the words. You know, some people are very, and I don't mean to single out men, but I know men haven't been trained to cry, you know, a little vulnerable, a little push tears away sometimes. But tears are really a strength that we have within us to build connection with ourselves, deepen ourselves, and definitely connection to humanity and how we relate to other people. You know, what keeps us, though, if we live in this ocean of compassion, that's all there is. And Spirit is continually working on compassion in us and everyone and everything. What keeps us from diving into that ocean? What keeps us hanging on the shore or sitting on the beach instead of jumping into that pool of compassion? Well, first of all, we have to really be aware of the sea, of the ocean, that it's there for us. But if we live in a place of dualistic thinking is very different than independent thinking, individual thinking. We're all individuals and we have our own thoughts and they're good and that's fine and it's wonderful. If we were all the same, that would be really boring. But dualistic thinking is making people right and wrong, making things right and wrong. It has a lot of judgment in it. But love softens us. And if we take that dualistic thinking and infuse it with, oh, there are no bad people, as I've said the last 2 weeks. There's only bad choices. People are learning and growing and becoming just like I am. And we really put some humanity into that and soften that dualistic thinking, we can get closer away from the shore into the feeling of what compassion really is, owning our heart and our mind. The same thing with the thinking thoughts of being separate from the world, separate from each other. We need love to be infused into that. You know, it's interesting because someone asked me this week, do people ever bug you? Well, yeah, I'm human, of course. Well, what do you do about that? I love them more. And that's the truth. You know, Rumi again said, if you're going to get irritated by every rub, how will you ever get polished? You know, we need to just own, people are human and have weaknesses and imperfections. You know the saying, be in this world but not of it. It said Jesus said that, but he didn't say quite that. Similar but not quite. Be in this world but not of it. It doesn't mean that we're separate from the world. I think one of my favorite quotes is Meister Eckhart when he says, have one of your hands in the hand of God at all times, and the other reaching down to the world. We want to be in spirit and part of the world at the same time. So all I think that means, to be in the world and not of it, is to recognize that we're here as visitors. We're here to learn and grow. It's a classroom for us. But where we come from is very, very different. And we need to own that and hold that. Kurt, where are you? Do you want to share a little bit? Well, you usually sit back there. You didn't tell me. I was talking a little bit, Kirk, what I was talking about today, and he had brought something up just like it did when the Sea of Compassion, I just melted into it. He said, I remember when I've touched the Sea of Compassion. Do you want to share a little bit about that, babe?
Well, what Sandy's referring to is an experience I had as a child, which some of you know this, some of you don't. It's not something I openly talk about because it was an experience I had, and it might be a little hard for some people to understand, but I'll do the best I can. When I was 9 years old, I had a near-death experience falling from a tree that I loved to climb and landing on my head. Okay, and at that time in our history, there wasn't a thing called a near-death experience. So at 9, I had this experience where I was unconscious and I saw everything unfolding from up above. I could give you details of who everybody was, what they were wearing. They put my body in the ambulance and took me to emergency at the hospital. And I, of course, was blacked out by that time. Once the view from up above, then I just went to blackout once I was in the ambulance. So fast forward 40 years, and I wanted to find out what happened during that blackout, because I didn't recall it. I only recalled the near-death experience. So I found somebody who did hypnosis, which I'd never been hypnotized, so I didn't know what to expect. And if you've never been hypnotized, at least I was fully conscious of what I was saying, doing, and seeing. So went into the hypnosis, and the lady took me back to that time in my life at 9 years old, what happened after I blacked out. And what I saw and experienced changed my life, and when I talk about this, it somewhat brings me to tears because it was such an emotional experience. I was thrust into the universe. It was all just light, stars, and just beauty. And I felt this love like we do not experience on this physical plane. I was just basking in love and felt supported. And I was brought to tears and just wanted to stay in that experience. And I wish I could describe it in a more physical term, but it's something that is very emotional and that we get to experience at some point in our journey through life and the other side. We get to experience that and feel that total abandonment of judgment, of anything but pure love and understanding. And obviously I did come back. And, I never shared some of these experiences till I was a young adult because I just wasn't sure what they were. But 40 years after that experience, going back and experiencing the higher love that Sandy's talking about today, and just, it's unbelievable. So I wanted to share that because it was such a profound experience that changed my life. So thank you for listening.
So we get to that compassion, that sea of compassion, in very different ways. The one thing I know is another thing that's going to let us, sometimes we're pushed, as you were, Kirk, into that sea of compassion, falling out of a tree. Other times we jump because we just want a change of experience, and we go into study, we go into meditation, we do something to jump into that sea. But we need to be broken open. We need to break open that distance between the head and the heart, because God speaks to the heart. And the soul moves the heart, and the heart can change the intellect. Our state of mind determines really how we experience life. So the journey from the head to the heart is a long journey. But the heart, this is what Ernest Holmes said, God speaks to the heart. The heart must be translated through the intellect, or the feeling would be without form. Rumi says the heart acts as a translator between the mystical experience and the intellect. I don't know how the heart can reach a depth that the intellect can't, but the heart can get so deep, it can be that vessel for compassion. I'm going to share, I've got a few minutes, I'm going to share just 5 little stories. They're very short, and I want to see which one touches your heart the most. I looked these up, and these were stories, the true stories, little tiny stories about the little ways we can be broken into immense love. Immense. You don't need to do grandiose and great things. The first one was from a husband to his wife. Today, 2 days after my partner's funeral, I received a bouquet of flowers, which he had ordered for me the week before. The note read, "Even if cancer wins, I want you to know that our love is forever." Story 2. All for the shaggy friends. Today I won a court case that lasted a very long time. 14 months ago, I found out that my neighbor beat his dog. So I kidnapped it, and I got arrested. I spent a lot of money on the trial. But today, when I woke up and felt the warmth of my shaggy friend at my feet, I knew it was all worth it. Learning the language of love. My daughter came home from school and asked me where she could learn sign language. I asked her why she wanted to. She replied that there was a new girl at school who was deaf and only knew sign language, and she had no one to talk to. Miss sent, but still meant. Today, I accidentally chose the wrong number and sent my dad a message saying, "I love you," which was meant for my husband. A few minutes later, I got a reply. "I love you too, Dad." It was so touching. We say those things like that to each other so rarely. Never give up, number 5. I worked as a child therapist for 15 years. Later, I ran into one of the kids I previously worked with. He'd been a difficult child, always getting angry and upset at life. One time, I drew a picture of Superman, and I wrote a message of how superheroes never give up and always win in the end. The little boy is now a fireman and helps save people's lives. We chatted for about a half hour. Before parting, he opened his wallet and showed me the picture of Superman that he'd kept all this time. Little things matter. We can change the world. One outstretched hand, one hug, one little kind note, one acknowledgement about something wonderful someone has done. We can do that, and we don't know the ways that it will uplift or change people's lives. We can do that together. We can make a difference, and that's what I want all of us to focus on what we really want, what we want in our life, and then step it up a little bit. I read those little quotes that just fell out of my notebook in the beginning, and the last quote was from Nelson Mandela. And he worked diligently to urge love and forgiveness amongst his people, the populace, when he was the first president of South Africa, after being wrongly imprisoned for 27 years. And he famously said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I just knew, if I didn't leave bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison." What a message for all of us. Now is a time not to run away from any of the bad news, not to run away from things, because the conditions of the world are real. But we need to focus on the power we have to respond creatively, lovingly, kindly, compassionately to any situation that we are confronted with. That's our gift. That's who we are. I know it's in you, and I know it's in me, and I'd like to close with that same line that I did in the beginning. Every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. Let's say that again. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And just one more time, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. I'm lifting higher and higher and deeper, and filling myself with the courage to jump into that pool of compassion, knowing each one of us makes a difference. We are here for a reason. God is good, and so are we. Thank you all.